Hey there, CS360 students. So in this recording, we are going to go through the activity life cycle as well as activity state in an Android application. We'll then transition into the Lights Out app demo that they have that we can get up and running on our machine. And with that, we'll deal with rotating the screen and also how to handle multiple activities and intents. Last thing we'll close out with is how can we open up a web page or navigate to maps or open up Messenger, email, etc. From one of our own applications. So first thing we're going to do is start out with the activity lifecycle in Android. So as it starts out here saying the activity lifecycle are the states that an activity goes through when an activity is first launched until it is destroyed. And a lot of the life cycle depends on if we've either hit the back button while on the activity, if we hit the home button, or we are on the recents button. So these navigation buttons that we can see right here, those are what are going to handle the state that our activity is in. So if we scroll down here, the activity lifecycle moves through the following states. So we have the onCreate method that we start out with, and that's the first one that we've already worked with. So we have seen in our code in the onCreate method, that's where we get the UI. So if maybe this is our app, we get the UI, we get all the widgets. So this is where we start in our app. But then we can go into the onStart method. It's called right after onCreate. It prepares the activity to be visible. OnResume is called after onStart, and if the activity enters the foreground, so things like if you hit the back button. OnPause is a method called when the activity pauses, but it's still visible. OnStop is when the activity is stopped and no longer visible, so we're in the closing stages of the application. And then OnDestroy is called the after OnStop and immediately before the activity is destroyed. So some of the things that you have to navigate as a mobile developer or even in just like a Java GUI application is your activity starting up? Is it running? Is it being paused? Is it stopping? Is it being destroyed? So, we would handle things like, opening up resources in OnStart. And then before OnDestroy, we would want to make sure that all the resources get closed, so that way we don't have things running in the background. So again, as we see here, they have a nice a diagram here showing the activity states. So if we start up our app, so it's going to go through onCreate, then it's going to go into onStart, then it's going to go into onResume. And as we hit the back arrows and things, we're going to be looping back through these different states. So keep that in mind that you might want to handle particular things in particular areas. And again, these are all callbacks, and they've implemented in this little demo code here all of the different callbacks that you might have in an application. So again, we've already started out with the onCreate method. This is where we set our content view, but you can see here that they've added logging to the different steps. So that way, if we wanted to, we could navigate to our app, hit the back arrows, exit out of it, and we would see the callbacks that are occurring as those happen. Okay, so let's move on to section 2. So one of the things that happens in the activity lifecycle is as you navigate away, if you were to potentially turn the device, so you can see that they've rotated the device, your device state doesn't get automatically saved. And what I mean by that is, let's say that we have a text field here where we have the total number of pizzas. If we rotate the device, if we don't handle saving the state, then we're going to lose these pieces of information. So to maintain state, one of the things that we can do is to a widget, we can add freezes text. We can set that to true. So that way if the state has changed, it would maintain that detail. We can also save activity state using what's called a bundle. So you can see right here in the onCreate method that we've already been familiar with that it has a bundle called the saved instance state. And this bundle has key value pairs that are available to it. So it's like a Python dictionary where I can ask for a key. So I have to have a key that's saved. So you can see here that we have a key called total pizzas. And I can go to the saved instance state if it's not null. So if it's not been created, I can't do this, but once it's been created, I can go to the saved instance state and I can ask it for a key and I can get the value associated with that. And you can see that we are specifying the data type with that. So the total pizzas, that's a number 15, so we would use get int, or we might have a get string or a get double, depending on the data type that is associated with it. So this shows that we can access the information if it's been saved. Over here on save instance state, we can again have a bundle. We can put values to that saved instance state. So you can see here they are doing the put int using the key and then assigning the value that we have with it. So in the calculate handler, you can see that they create a new calculator. We've got the member variable getting saved off. So right here, that member variable, that is this variable right here. And so anytime the on save instance state is triggered, it's going to use that m total pizzas, this global variable inside this activity class. So we could have multiple values that we want to save. So we would just simply save off whatever information. We'd have a private member variable for it. In the onCreate, we're going to check if the saved instance state is not null. And then we can get it. Again, we can use get int or get string, whatever data type it might be. And then when we want to actually save those pieces off, we use a put call, put int, put string, and so forth with the associated key and value with it. Last thing to point out is that this on save instance state is not part of the activity lifecycle and is not guaranteed to be called when an activity is stopped. So if an app needs to save and restore persistent data, so if they've shut down the application and you want this data to be persisted, then you'd have to use a different mechanism to restore that data. In fact, what you would probably use is a database to pull the information from. And we'll get to that in a future chapter. All right, so let's change gears and let's go into section 3.3 where we're going to create this lights out app. So a nice little demo that we can see here. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and start up Android Studio. And when it is up and running, I want you to go ahead and create a new project. Go with empty activity and give it the name lights out. And then you're going to want to change this to be com.zyBooks lights out because that's going to match the code that you can copy and paste from the zyBooks. So again, they give you the details right there. So we have code that we can just go ahead and copy and paste. So we're going to go ahead and add this class called the lights out game to our Java directory. So to do that, we're going to go to Android Studio, right click the package, add new Java class, and then you're going to call it lights out game. And then you can go ahead and copy and paste all of the code that they provided for the lights out game.java file. So in here, this is going to create the game, and as you saw in the initial screenshot, what it is it's going to have a two-dimensional array where this is going to be, eventually we want to turn all of these lights out. If it's yellow, it's on. If it's black, it's off. And so again, it's a 3 by 3 2D array. And so they've got the columns and rows size there. Here is that array. When we new up our instance, we're going to create a new instance of this array. And we are going to randomly generate whether or not it is turned on or off. That's what the constructor is doing right here in the, let me phrase it, that's what the new game method is doing when it's called. We can get the information if the light is on, so we pass it the row and column, and it returns whether or not it is a on or off. And then we can select, we give it the row and column, and this code goes through and identifies which row, which column we have, and it will select it for us. So if it's not on, it will turn it on, and vice versa. We can check if the game is over. So if all of the lights are turned off, then it will return true. Otherwise, if any of them are turned on, it will return a false. So that's what this code right here is doing. Let's continue on. So they do give us the activity main XML code, so for the UI. So go ahead and copy all of this code right here. And inside Android Studio, we would go to the activity main layout, so in resources layout, and go ahead and copy and paste all of that code that they provide. Next thing that they provide is some strings, so go ahead and copy and paste these strings. So we're going to go to the resources, values, strings, open it up, copy and paste. They give us some styles. So go ahead and with the styles, if I remember right, let me see here. With the styles, looks like I copied and pasted the exact same content. Yeah, I copied and pasted. So copy and paste this to the resource value styles. And then for the colors, I want you to do this. I want you to just copy these values right here. And so then when you go to paste it in, so in the colors, I want you to paste that in underneath what's already provided for you. So if you get rid of these values right here, I had some compilation issues because under the covers it was looking for these. So make sure that you just add our additional details here. We continue on. So we also have the main activity.java code that's provided. So go ahead and copy all of this code right here. And so that's going to go inside, open up main activity. You're going to go ahead and paste in all of that code. And so what we have is a reference to the game object. We'll have a reference to all of these buttons that we have right here. And then we have a variable to save on if it's on color or if it's off color. And we are going to, in the onCreate method, we're going to create our layout. We're going to get the color for on color. We're going to get the color for off color. So those are going to be the yellow and the black colors right there. We're going to create a new button array. So we've got our button array created. And it's going to go into our game and grab the size. So that's a 3 by 3. We're going to create a grid layout, and then we're going to fill the buttons right here. Last thing we do in the onCreate is we're going to create our game instance, and then we're going to call the method start game. And what start game does is it calls the game's new game method. So let's go take a peek at it. So what new game does is it generates a random number, and then it's going to randomly assign on and offs to each of these buttons. And then set button colors, let's go into it. So set button colors goes through all of the rows and columns, goes through all of the buttons and checks if it's on, and if so, it sets it to the on color. Otherwise, it sets it to the off color. So the next thing to look at is we do have a handler for when the buttons are clicked. That got added. Where do we add that? Is that in the activity main? Yeah. So when the on light button click is clicked, that's an event handler for each of those buttons that we have. So the handler for those is right here. So what we do is we go through each row and column, and they are going to handle selecting the light. So that sets up in the game, and then the set button colors gets called. And again, we've seen that already. That goes through, checks if the button is supposed to be on or off, and sets it appropriately. It does check if game is over, so it has a handler inside the game class. And again, it checks if all of them are true. Otherwise, if any of them still have a light on, it's going to return out a false. And if it is a game over, it says congratulations that we win the game. So a little bit of details on the Java code that we have there. Last thing in there, I believe that's all the pieces that they give us, right? Yeah. So one thing that they left for us as a to-do. So as a to-do, they left in there that we need to respond to the new game button click. So this button right here. And in the XML, if you scroll down, they defined for that button on new game click. Right there's that method. So that's associated with this button right here. So if we come in here, we're going to go ahead and hook up that method. It's a void method on new game click. We provide it the view, and all we're going to do is call start game. So once I get all of that implemented, I should be able to run the emulator or run it on my device. And if I click new game, then I start up a new game, and I can see that it will turn things on and off. Again, it works by turning the adjacent values on and off. So there we go. We've got it up and running. All right, so let's go to the next section. And here we're going to deal with if we want to rotate the screen. So if we rotate the screen, what will happen is some Android devices that have this auto rotated turned on or off, what it will do is it will rotate the screen and you lose the content. So you can see that the new game button is not there because it can't render it based on this dimension right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust our activity where potentially it runs only in portrait mode or landscape mode, or we can make it where we have a landscape variation. So what we're going to do is edit our layout activity. So I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this. Oops, sorry, let me, I gotta create the landscape variation in there. So let me get Android Studio. And so we are going to our device manager. Sorry, no, I want my XML selected. Okay, so I needed to go to the design tab. So I'm going to go to my activity main XML, go to design tab, and we can hit the drop down for activity main, and I'm going to create a landscape qualifier right there. So hit that, and this will create the layout. So you can see here that they have activity main landscape layout right there. And I'm going to go to the code there, and I'm going to paste in the code that we have right here. So I'm going to copy and paste this. In fact, it might be the exact same. I might not need to do this. Let me copy that. And let's see here. So we have a grid layout. If I go to design, they've got the button on the side. So when I put in the code that we have here, so I'm going to delete all this and paste. I've got to rename mine. This is lights out demo. You don't need to rename it if you named everything properly. So there's example. And so now if I look at design, now we have that grid with the button over here on the side. So I've got a layout that will work landscape form. So if we scroll down, we should be able to just rerun this and tilt our device and get it to run in landscape form. So let me go ahead and hit stop. I'm going to rebuild and rerun. We'll see if I have to rerun it twice. Looks like I do, so let me see if I have to rerun it. I'll be back when this is up and running. Okay, so I've got it up and running here, and using the emulator, you can see that there is a rotate left and right. So if I rotate left, that should have automatically adjusted. I think I missed a setting, so let me go back and double check that. Okay, I figured out what my issue was. So I needed to adjust some settings. So I can swipe down. So you just drag down with your mouse, and I'm going to keep dragging down. Auto rotate, I had it as off. I needed to turn that on. So now if I rotate the device, it does automatically rotate. So if I put it back up, it does then switch appropriately. Okay, so that is all functional right now. So back to the zyBooks. So if we wanted to restore the activity state, so as we navigate through the different orientations, we might want to restore our activity state. So if we go back, let me demonstrate why we need this restoring the activity state. So if I go back, so keep in mind right here, I have, let's see if I can get it where something kind of easily seen. So I've got 3 off right here, right in the middle. If I rotate the device, you'll see that it changes and I lost the activity state. So every time we rotate that screen, we lose the activity state. So let's go ahead and hook up the code that maintains that activity state. So we're going to have a get state and a restore state method that we can implement. So if we want to, we can add this code to our lights out game class. So let's go add that in. So get state and restore state is available to us now. And then we're going to update our main activity to use that. So in the on create, it's going to get this additional code. So let's go put that in. So in the on create, let's just paste it in here and let's see here. So we want to keep, so this can be, so this was originally there and this was originally there. So now it becomes, we create our new game, so we don't need to worry about that. So if we have a saved instance state, it's going to call start game. Otherwise, we're going to save, we're going to pull in the saved instance state. So I can get rid of all this commented out code. We need a variable called game state. So let's see, did they provide that to us? Yeah, right there it is. So let's go get that key game state. That's going to get saved at the top. So we're going to have game state as the key. So in the on create, if we have a saved instance state, it's not null. This will then retrieve the game state, and we're going to restore it right here. In the on save instance state, let's go ahead and copy all of this. I don't think we have that on save instance state, so let's go see. On save instance state. Nope, we don't have that. So let's go ahead and come down here and paste that in. I need to import this. And so this is going to put a string of the game state and save that right there. So let's go ahead and rerun this. So if we rerun this new version, so I can see that I have 3 yellow ones right there. If I rotate the screen, I still have the exact same representation. So as we rotate back around now, let me get it back in the proper form. There it is. So now we are maintaining the state of our application. Okay. Next thing we're going to look at is what if we want to have multiple activities and intents. So creating a new activity, we're going to create a Java file for it. We're going to create a layout for it, and we're going to add the activity to the Android manifest file. So what we're going to do for this one is add a help activity. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make this so I can kind of see both screens at once here. So let's go to creating a new activity. So let's go new activity. And I can just go with empty activity. And we're going to call this help activity. And we're going to leave everything as default, and we click finish. So there is our help activity right there. There's the Java code for that. And we also have the activity help XML file created. So let's go ahead and get, oops, sorry, they're going to have us update the Android manifest first. So let's do that first. So we're going to open up the Android manifest, and we're going to add an additional activity. So in fact, we're going to add the color activity as well. So let's go ahead and copy and paste. And we're going to put that underneath our existing activity. So right here. They do want us to create one called color activity. So let's go ahead and do that as well. And we click finish. So now it knows about that activity and it is no longer complaining about that. Okay, so now let's scroll down. And so typically to start an activity, we are going to use an intent object specifying the activity to start or the type of action that it needs to handle. So our lights out needs a help button to start that. So we're going to add a help button to our main screen. So we can just go ahead and copy this. And let's go to our main, activity main, and go to code. And underneath the new button, we will add an additional button for the help button. We need to add the help string, so we'll go ahead and grab that. And we'll add that to the strings. We have a handler for the on help clicked that got added. That's right here. So let's go to our main Java. Let me get that emulator closed out for now. And we add that handler as well. Next thing to do is we have the code for the help activity. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, trying to. Let me see here. What did they actually give us in help activity? Do we already have it? Yeah, we've got. Okay, so we already have everything that they are going to provide. We don't need to do anything there. So before I get down here, I was thinking as I saw here, I've got some syntax errors. So let me go back over here and go to your Android manifest file. So when I added the activity, I kind of botched up my manifest file. So let's go back in here. So if you followed my instructions, we got to delete that out. And I'm going to come down here, and when I added those activity, and when I added the color activity afterwards, it updated the manifest file. So let me see if I've got this all cleaned up now. So I've got a duplicate activity for the help activity. So let me just do this. I'm going to delete out that right there. And now I should be good. Okay, so now I've got my Android manifest all cleaned up. And before we get too far down there, we should probably do a sanity check and make sure that things are kind of looking right and working properly. So let's do a run it real quick. So it's always good to run it. And aha, look here. So I've got a help button that's out of place. So I'm going to bet that when I pasted that in, I probably didn't put it in the layout properly. So let's go ahead and fix that. So I'm going to go back to my layout, and I want to have that button in the right spots. Let's see if they gave us an update for that. I'll be right back. And so it took me a minute or two, and I found some buggy code that we copied and pasted. So this help button is supposed to be constrained according to the new game button. And take a look here. They've got this called in the code we pasted here, button new game, but the actual name of that button is new game button. So we need to fix that. And so now we are going to be constrained to the new game button. So now if you run this, we're going to have our new game button, and now we have the help button located in the right spot. All right, so not much interesting there. We are able to have our buttons. If you click that help button, it will open up the new activity. And at this point, we don't have anything in that help activity, but we'll do that in the colors activity here in a second. So now we can scroll down, and what we want to do is we want to start up an activity and get its result. So what we're going to do is start up our activity. So we use start activity for result. We pass it an intent and a request code. And then we can put into the intent extras that have key value pairs as far as information that we want to attach to this. The started activity calls a set result method. Again, we have the result code and an intent, and this will send a result back to the calling activity when the current activity is destroyed. So when we hit the back arrow, we'll send back a result and the intent containing the information we want. So we can kind of come down here, and what we're going to do is add another button to our home page. So we'll go ahead and copy this button. This is going to be to change colors. So let's go add in that code, and we need to make sure that we have everything hooked up properly. Again, it's not called button new game, it is new game button. And we need to add a string for the color button. So that's right here. So let's go grab those, add those to the strings, and let's see if our main layout is cleaned up. We'll have to implement an on-change color clicked here in a second, so let's go ahead and get that shortly. Let's do our colors next. So we're going to add the colors to the colors XML. And just for the purposes of knowing where things are, I'll go ahead and separate that out. We must have a black one already in there. So I'm going to delete out this additional one. All right. And now we've got our activity color XML, so let's go ahead and put that in. So activity color XML, there it is. I'm going to go to the code and we'll just replace it and paste that in. Looks like everything is good in there, so we're good. So now in the main activity Java code, we're going to add in these parts. So this is going to handle the color activity. So I go to my Java main activity. So we have this request code. And then we're going to add in our on color change click event handler. So I'll put that at the bottom. And so what this is going to do is it's going to create an intent where we're going to pass it as the application here. And then we're going to specify which activity we want to start up. This is going to then call start activity for result. As you can see, this is deprecated. So at some point, this is going to be removed. But for our purposes, since this is what they provided us, we're going to go ahead and go with it. We pass it the intent and then that request code color that we defined up at the top. Now, we're going to handle on activity results. We're going to add this in. Let's go ahead and add our imports. And once we get color activity defined, this will clean up. So what this is going to do is this will be called when the result from the other activity occurs. So we're going to check if we get an OK back. We're going to check if the color is updated, and we will set the updated colors right here. So let's go ahead and copy in all of the color activity code. So let's open up that file. And let's move some stuff around. We need to import the view. We need to import intent. And I think we are all good there. One thing I need to make sure I do, I should make sure that I match my naming convention of my package. So I've got com example lights out demo. So that's the key that this is going to use. And it's very typical that we want to use our naming convention of our application right there. All right, I think we have everything hooked up there. So let's see if we can run and compile. Let's make sure everything's running and good. Again, I always have to run this twice. So we've got our change color button. So if we click it, it should start up that activity. And here we have the radio buttons associated with it. All right. So now let's make it so that when we choose something, that information will be passed back when we return back to our main screen. So let's go ahead and stop that. And here we have the code that's going to handle that. So in our main activity, what we're going to do is when we click the on change color button, to our intent, we're going to put in the current color that we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called the current color ID. So we're going to add that to the top. And then we're going to default it to yellow. So that was in the onCreate. So it doesn't really matter where we do it. I'll do it right up here at the top. So that's going to default our current color ID. And then inside our onChangeColor, we're going to pass that value to the intent when it's passed. So let's come down here, and that was in the onChangeColor clicked. So onChangeColor clicked. So we're going to add that information to the intent. And then on the result, we'll go ahead and get that value back. So let me go ahead and copy that. And that was right underneath the if statement there. I think we already kind of had that code in there, yeah. So now we are going to reset our member variable, and then we're going to turn it into a color right there. All right, so in the color activity, when it starts up, we're going to go get what it contains and then have our current color ID. So let's add that to the color activity. That is in the onCreate method right there. Right. Yep. In fact, let me get all of this right here. So I need to get my radio button. And let me make sure that gets the intent. We get the color ID out of that. And we are setting the radio button to the one that is true. So let's see if this is all behaving properly. When we start up our color activity, it should identify which one is currently selected. So we should have yellow currently selected, and yeah, there it is, great. So it starts up with the currently selected color, and then in the on color selected event. So if I choose a different color, what this is going to do is it's going to figure out which one is chosen, and then it's going to create a new intent. It's going to put the color that we just chose. So the color we just chose is going to be put into the intent. We're going to do a set result with a result OK in our intent, and we click finish. And that's going to close out this activity. So if I choose, say, red, when I go back, the yellow squares are going to be turned red. And there it is. So we have a way to start up a new activity and then pass information back to the started activity. So that is passing intents and using multiple activities. The last thing, and I'm going to kind of leave this one to you, is what if you wanted to start up other types of activities? So for instance, maybe you want it where there's a button and they click a button and it sends them to a web page. So we could create an additional activity, and then in there it has a button, and when the button gets clicked, you can see that they are creating the website page, and then they create an intent called action view. So these intents are available, and then you give it the web page. When you then call start activity, this will then go to the default web browser for the device and take them to that web page. Similarly, you might want to have them have a dial method where they're going to open up the phone, and what it might do is it might pull up either creating a new contact or add to a contact or send a message. So if there's multiple ways of handling it, those choices will be presented to the user, and then they can choose how they want to proceed. Same thing if they might have multiple web browsers installed. It might pop up, the different versions, and then they choose which one. Continuing on, you might want to send them to a map of a location. So you can see that they have the location, and then we start up an action view intent with the location. And when this starts up, it would go to potentially Google Maps. We could also set it where we can send out an email. So we would open up their default email browser, email application, and we could fill in information as far as the subject, the extra text, and it would populate in the application. Okay, so that is it for the chapter 3. Again, a lot of detail. I apologize for kind of bumbling around a little bit there. I was getting interrupted as I was creating the recording. I had to kind of remember where I was. But the big idea that we have here is that we can create multiple activities, and in using intents, we can pass data to them using key value pairs.